Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to the webinar. The idea of doing this webinar is to, take any last-minute queries that you might have about soil or anything that's bothering you. You would like to know from me as a dean of soil. Before I begin to take your questions, let me give a brief introduction about myself, so that you know about a little bit more about me. Well, I am Subhajyoti. I have joined soil only this month, that is the 1st of April 2013. I did my PhD from IIM Ahmedabad. Before that, I used to work for the Reserve Bank of India, and I've done my postgraduate from Indian Statistical Institute. Before joining soil, I was the dean at Xavier Institute of Management in Bhubaneswar. For about 7 years I've been working there, and this opportunity came up, and I kind of believed in the philosophy of soil, and so I'm here now. Okay, so that's about me. I have already, some of you may have already seen a little bit of a clip that is on the website where I talk about soil, its values, and what we try to do here. So as I can see, the best way to proceed with this webinar would be to take questions that you might have, and see how it goes. Well, Vinamra AACSB, that's a very good question that you asked. Yes, in the long-term plan, certainly I would say it's a big yes. That's a gold standard of accreditation in the world, and any good B school would like to have one such accreditation, and soil certainly has plans going forward to it. But as you know, it's in the planning stage. A lot of effort goes into this whole accreditation process. I am aware of quite a few schools which are also trying to do that, and therefore yes, my answer would be yes, we are trying to do that, but the action is going to happen in the coming years. Well, to the specific question about whether you can join soil now, as you know, we've already closed the deadline. We had our deadline for accepting applications. So my answer to your question would be therefore a big no. However, if you are an exceptional student, we might be able to look at you, but I cannot guarantee that off the cuff. I would suggest that you speak to the admissions team, and let's see how it can be worked out. But my immediate reaction to that would be that we have deadlines to follow. Sessions begin about 3 weeks from now, so I would say no would be an answer. But you could still speak to the admissions team. Yeah, that's right, Gunjan. I suppose our marketing and the career forward team have been updating on various forums about how the placement scenario is. And it's as you know, placement is an outcome of several factors: the macroeconomic environment, the competition in the market, and things like that. So the current numbers, I'm sure, will be released, and we're reviewing every day, and we are making progress. We would have liked to make a much rapid progress than we are making right now, but given all our energies and strengths put together, we are very much hopeful of a complete placement sooner than later. So yes, we are making progress. We would have liked to make better progress this year. It's been a tough year for many schools, but nonetheless, I think there has been some recently good progress on that. So exact numbers are again available on multiple forums, and you will certainly get periodic updates. Yes, RA, you have a mining background. Well, a lot of companies come here. It's from all kinds of sector, from manufacturing to services, IT, and all the stuff. All kinds of sectors come in. But ultimately it depends on what is the kind of profile. A lot of reasons for doing an MBA is you want to change your career from one sector to the other, or one kind of a role to the other. So it depends on what. So if you say that did we have let me just for example tell you that majority of our students have engineering backgrounds. So some of them would have been employed in construction companies, some would be in the IT company. So we have students as diverse as that. So being in mining especially is neither a big advantage or neither is going to be a disadvantage. It depends on what program you choose, and how you make the best use of the time that you spend at soil is going to decide the kind of profiles you look here. And of course, we do try to put people for lateral hires. So if there is a very specific kind of a profile, that you have, you would certainly put best efforts to see that a profile that you want matches. Okay, Gunjan, all those things beginning causes most of all us quitting the job to do the program. How do you see? Well, Gunjan, it's a good question, but it will be hazarding. I don't want to second guess the economic scenario, right? See, the thing is, if you say, how is 2013-14 going to be? One could say, just repeat what is in the papers: an economic growth of 6.5–7%, or if there's an election, the things might change for bad or for better. You never know. So, nonetheless, the country is growing. People are getting their jobs. We are not into a recession. So all those things are there. And to me, if you ask me in general, I would say we have seen the worst. It can only improve. So I would say 2013-14 would be better than 2012-13. Vineet and Vimala, I see a lot of questions on the kind of profiles that you expect, right? Now, profiles depend on several things. One is, what is your kind of experience? When let's say you have 3 years of experience of some type, the profile that you're going to get is going to value you the kind of experience that you already have. So if you have a sales experience of 3 years in a certain sector, you're more likely to get into similar roles subsequently with a higher salary. That is what would normally conclude. So if you want to value the experience, but suppose you are in sales and you want to get into HR, obviously it becomes a little bit of a challenge for the recruiter, because your sales experience doesn't count much for an HR profile. So it will be an extension of your current engagement. But I would say that give you a general answer, a lot of it depends on what is your experience, how you project your experience, and how much have you understood, or what is the kind of role have you actually played out in that experience. All these 3 factors really determine what profile you're going to eventually get. How is a company or a recruiter going to evaluate? See, every profile has certain competencies, right? So if you are a consultant, you have to have a solution mindset, for example. If you are a sales or a business development person, you need to have a different kind of competition about influencing, about negotiation, about closing the deal. So depending on the competencies that we have, which brings me to a very interesting part of what Soil does, as when you join Soil, the beginning of the year, during the induction process, we do what is called a development center, wherein we map every single student, each one of the students' competencies. So we know what competency who has, and we use that competency to kind of mentor you throughout the year, so that you are fully grown, try to get your potential, and eventually settle into roles which suit your best, in not only your interests but also your capabilities. So that's what we call the individual learning plan, that is decided at the very beginning of the induction week through a 2-day process at Soil. And then we try to very closely adhere to that plan while monitoring your progress, while mentoring and things like that. Yeah, Vinny, that's a good question. See, I've spent a very exciting, beautiful 7 years at XIMB. What inspired me to join Soil is precisely the whole fact that Soil tries to be a very different business school. It's trying to address the challenges not just about supplying human resource to the corporate sector, but to actually supply good human beings to the society and the country. And that is what is the need of the hour. I mean, the way we are growing, the selfishness of our growth, let's say the non-inclusiveness of our growth is actually creating a lot of problems in the society. You will see the rich-poor divide growing every day, every year, every month. And what Soil is trying to do is to try to build leaders who are not only competent but have a sound character with a lot of enthusiasm, bring in a lot of energy to the work they do, and do it in a very ethical manner, so that they can spread goodness and happiness around. And this whole idea of trying to build this is a very, very challenging thing to do, no doubt, but is what inspired me to be here. And I'm sure several of my colleagues are right here for the same reason. It's a challenge, but we love this challenge. Amit, the answer to the question on scholarship is that The scholarship is based on multiple criteria. Of course, the single most important reason is need. Even though we are fully self-financed, we still try to see that students don't miss out on educational opportunities because of shortage of money. So we try to help those in need. So need is one very important criteria. Of course, you should also be deserving. You should be, so it's a need, mostly come merit scholarship. Okay, so these are the two broad criterias. We look at your family income, your education background, what kind of experience you've had, how you've performed consistently in the academic year. So there's a scholarship committee here which goes through the applications and then decides whether or not to give a scholarship and what is the amount to which we can facilitate your education. Oh yes, Ramesh, good question. Does it facilitate entrepreneurship? Yes, certainly. I mean, we just a very young institute and you already have 3 entrepreneurs budding, and you may have already heard stories of that. Now, if you look at in a holistic manner across all B schools, which have thousands of alumni, and see the percentage of students who become entrepreneurs, and you look at the alumni base of soil, 200 odd, and see the number of students who are already into entrepreneurship or even social entrepreneurship, you will realize that there is indeed the way the whole curriculum is designed, the way we impact your character and the way we allow you to discover your potential is actually creating some entrepreneurs out of this. So in terms of sheer percentages, I think we are doing good. So yes, even though we will not say that please do become an entrepreneur, we will certainly rekindle that spirit that you have, and we will certainly expose you to a lot of leadership series during the course, by which you will come to know about how such businesses are run, what are the entrepreneurs. Even in the current batch, the batch that's going to pass out, I know one student who is already trying to take that leap in the entrepreneurship. So it is the whole ecosystem that is going to influence you to do what you want to do and pursue what you really your true passion is. Well, I would not hazard a guess about the scope of an IT person. I mean, if you look at people who are enrolling to management programs across the country, 95% of them are, let's say, okay, 70% of them are actually coming from an IT background. And still they are getting FMCG jobs, right? So it's not necessarily that you only have to be, because that is the scenario in the country. I mean, most people have an IT background these days. So obviously it depends on how well you've performed in the program, how you understood your marketing lessons, and how you can relate your experience and show those skills that is necessary. So I would not rule it out. Of course, if you are 7 years into an IT experience and then try to get into the FMCG in a business development or sales kind of a profile, it may occasionally be a challenge. But these very, very specific questions, I would also request you, I'm sure our placement, the Career Forward team will also allow you to help you to get some answers to that. But my general take would be, yes, there's nothing stopping you from shifting. That is one of the reasons why you pursue a higher education, is to change your track. Besides the very general challenges, let's look at 2-3 challenges. What does the Indian economy face? What is the challenge number one? The challenge number one is, of course, the slow growth, but that is not really a challenge. That is a symptom of something else. And the real challenge is how to improve the investment climate in the country, how to make corporates begin to invest, begin to make those capital investments so there are more employment opportunities. That is number one. Number two is about redistribution. A lot of wealth is being generated in the country, but the time it takes for the wealth to be reaching the poorest of the poor is really, really long. And so therefore the gap between the haves and the have-nots is increasing at a very rapid pace. The third, of course, is governance. I wouldn't say governance is a challenge for everything. I mean, this is how, if I have to start a steel plant and if it takes, let's say, X number of days to get all the approvals and the clearances done, and if another country can do it in 0.1 X days for the same work, there's a serious governance issue. So these are big challenges which are going to impact the economy. Well, bad governance is one big reason, but it's also about, it's also about character of the leaders and the people who are running, who are at the leaders. It's a bit of a crisis of leadership. For example, are you making the right decisions, the right choices? Are you doing business in the right way? Are you pricing it fairly? Are you making undue profits? These are big questions. So therefore, these all impact the way the economy is going to grow and how long it is going to be sustainable. It's also about decision making. Is there inertia in decision making, or is your decision making a very systematic process? Is your decision making a sensitive and a mindful activity? So what is guiding the decision making at all levels? So there are several such small and big challenges. Well, what about the concept of leadership? Well, you already know about the soil's concept of leadership, right? Soil's concept of leadership is one who is inspired by the values of ethics, about mindfulness, about diversity, about inclusion, about sustainability. So what is the idea of a leadership? Well, the biggest challenge a leader has to face is to deal with dilemmas. Every time you are a leader, you will be faced with situations which will be unprecedented, and you will have to take decisions in those challenges, and you will have to perform, and you have to be seen to be fair and just to your team. Now, when such a situation is faced, a true leader would also show at the same time, despite facing all these challenges and supposedly having a lot of power of decision making, will also demonstrate a lot of humility. A true leader must be able to simultaneously do all these things. Take decisions wherever big dilemmas are faced based on core values of the organization and your own self. Demonstrate humility in the way you deal with your team and your subordinates and everybody else. And ultimately your test is in your performance. How have you performed? The goals that you set for yourself, have you been able to reach the goals? And how have you let your team rise to the challenges? So how do you take the best out of your team members so that those goals can be reached? So a leader is not just about your own self. It is also about the people surrounding you and how you take them together, how you bring the best, how you recognize their potential and how they can contribute and make them contribute happily and joyfully. Well, there's a lot of pessimism. It is the way you want to look at it. A glass is half full or half empty. While you certainly hear a lot of bad news in the newspapers or TV channels, but if you look around, even in your neighborhood, you will witness far more number of good stories, good incidents, good people doing good things. So it's the way you are going to look at it. And if you think that the world is a very bad place and there is no hope and nothing can be done about it, and you are cursing the system, you will never be happy. But the other way to look at it is look, there is a lot of challenges in this world, but at the same time, a lot of good things are happening. And let's pick it up from there. Let's see how we learn from there. One of the things that soil does is we appreciate each other a lot. For example, we practice a philosophy called appreciative inquiry. In that we know all that we learn from failures, right? But in appreciative inquiry, it's just the opposite. We try to learn from success. We ask each other, what was the best when we performed? What was the things that happened during that time? Who was there? Questions and answers to such events of the past allow us to learn more about each other, about how soil was performing. So this kind of appreciation, trying to look at positive things and getting lessons out of that, is another way to look at it. So of course, life is never going to be perfect in your own way. It's your world view that is ultimately going to determine how you're going to look at it. So whether you're going to look at the pessimism and relax and forget about thinking, doing something big, making a difference, or is it you are going to take a note of a lot of good things happening and how to make it bigger and make a difference. So it all depends on your individual perspective, and I am sure there is more good than bad in this world. There's no doubt about it. Well, can ethics be taught is an unsettled debate, so I will not say yes or no. Ethics is something that you ultimately, it is nothing that is on the textbook. It is ultimately a call that each individual takes when faced with a situation or a dilemma. Well, what a course can do is to sensitize you. It can give you lots of ideas and examples of how certain situations were addressed, ethical issues were addressed, and that helps, that can give you a good guideline that in reality, when you are faced with some ethical dilemmas, how you address, how you navigate through those difficult times. But at the same time, an ethics decision is ultimately a very, very individual decision when it comes down really to that point. And that is where you need to know yourself and your values. Once you are clear about your values, you would be able to navigate through ethical dilemmas much more comfortably. And of course, you need to have the conviction in your values. Well, I will not say you will not be eligible, but I'm sure, I don't know, you have a team leader kind of an experience, which is obviously a variable kind of an experience, which has certain competencies which you already would be, can be used in other sectors, in other profiles. So I would not say that you would not be eligible. So you certainly should be eligible for non-BPO profiles as well. Absolutely. I mean, a team leader is one who is able to manage team, and that's a competency required in every kind of a role. Yeah. See, ultimately, in a very general way, the profile that one gets depends on your past experience, your performance in the program, the economic environment. So certain times you will have more profiles of one type coming, and in other areas you'll have profiles of another type coming, and your own individual competencies. So all these 3, 4, 5 different factors come together and results into a certain kind of a profile that you will get. Yeah, perhaps you are in a way right. It could be. I mean, you would leave unhappy, and perhaps the most often cited reason may not be the real reason, but the most often cited reason would be unhappy with the boss or too much pressure, which again is directly related to the boss, because that is the most visible, concrete relationship that you're living every day when in your work life. But sometimes you will see it could also be on your own part. Did you tell your problems? Did you share your problems? Did you communicate, or did you try to project your strengths? Did you only complain and not try to solve issues? Did you introspect? So these are even more fundamental things that could lead someone to leave a job and go for hunting for other job. And again, you might end up with another boss that time. Occasionally it might be a perfect match. It's no boss is perfect. The idea is to know whether you are perfect for each other, and the only way whether you will be perfect for each other is to be able to communicate with each other openly and set goals and know your strengths and weaknesses and have certain ground rules of operation. So this can be done, this cannot be done, and once that clarity is there, both expectations become aligned. So if you ask me in a very broad sense, that is what you have said is it because of managers people that leave? Well, but the manager has another manager. So where do you want to stop? So that is how the whole system is perhaps working. Now it is the responsibility of every one of us. Of course, the higher responsibility with higher, senior people, no doubt about that, is the way they talk to their team members down the line and communicate to them what are their expectations, are they listening to them, hearing their concerns. So these are certainly issues. But I would not blame only on managers. I'd like to rather qualify it a little bit. What makes a person a good manager? Well, first you have to be a good human being, number one. And then you have to be, obviously, you should know the domain you're working in. So if you are in FMCG, you should know the sector. If you are in whatever role, you should have sound knowledge. And you should be able to build trust in your team. You should be able to, let them know that you are a fair and a just person who expects certain work, is clear communication, and I can go on and on, the whole thing. So a good manager has to be fundamentally, number one, I would say, is a good human being with good knowledge, basic intellect, and XYZ. Okay. What's your take on spirituality? With so many spiritual channels nowadays, you get confused. But I would really like to put it very simply. Spirituality is a very private thing. I mean, you can't just begin to talk about spirituality or learn spirituality by hearing someone. It is a recognition or a realization that will come to you suddenly, maybe at a certain age, or when you've seen it, done it enough, and then you suddenly realize, what am I doing, who am I, what, and you start asking these fundamental questions about yourself. So spirituality to me is a very private journey about discovering yourself, your purpose, then beginning to truly understand your connection with the rest of the world. And once you begin to try, solve these little mysteries, life becomes much more peaceful as a consequence. So whether you are happy or sad, you really don't care in the ultimate level of spirituality, because you fully understood the entire design of this universe and your role in that. So you just look at it as a role. You're playing out a role there in a very detached manner. So my take on spirituality would be a discovery of self, a detachment with a goal of detachment, and better understanding of your connection with the world. So this is what I would put it, So it's a very, very private thing. So you could articulate in various ways, but ultimately it's a private journey and no one can actually teach you that. Well, as I said, we follow very strict guidelines of, admissions and deadlines. It'll be very unfair on my part to at this moment say yes or no to your request. But what I would strongly suggest is drop a line to the admissions team or call them up, and they'll see what best can be done, because we have certain deadlines to follow. We need to start the program in time. We need everyone on board at a certain date, so that because we have to do certain things by certain date in a very, very religiously we follow certain things. So I suppose if you still want to apply, my only suggestion to you would be to talk to the admissions team and let them explain to you the situation better. So I would not say neither a yes or a no at this point of time. Okay, so but there's no harm in speaking to the admissions team, and they have their own plans, so they'll be able to work out. Where do I see soil? Soil will be at least 3 times larger than what it is now, and a top-notch institute. That's what I see soil to be in the 5 years. I mean, so we wouldn't be doing webinars. You would have all these questions already known much before. In 5 years, we'll do different kind of webinars. You will not be asking me about placement, and you might be asking me different kind of questions at that point of time. So that's what I see in 5 years. 3 times bigger than what it is now, and top rank institute, which is already making an impact in the corporate and social sector. Well, my experience suggests that, if you want to go into an HR role, people may not really value your IT experience much. Sometimes they are very, very strict about these things. So, if I look at your profile very briefly from what you mentioned, I think a business leadership program seems to be more suitable for you. Well, AD, it's just the opposite. I've been a student at IIM Ahmedabad, and the guys who would top most of the courses in my batch at least were from commerce background. So actually, if you're a commerce background, you already have done a lot of management-like thinking. So I'm sure you will just do very well. So your commerce is only going to help, provided I'm assuming you know your commerce. Well, business excellence is actually broadly defined as the functional area courses that you're going to do. So they would be typical courses on various functional areas, including operations, including strategy, including marketing and things like that. So this is for functional knowledge about the business domain. So they're all put together and called as a business excellence course. A manager has to also to behave like a leader. These are two designations, two words, but you have to be a leader in your own way. So if you ask me what is a manager, well, primarily a manager would be allocating resources, coordinating activities and things like that. But in doing that, he or she has to be, so manager is like a designation, leader is like an attribute. Okay, so even if you are a project manager, your designation is project manager, but your team may say, oh, he's a wonderful leader. He's a great guy to work with. So he's still a leader. So leader is a very personal characteristics. It's more about your attributes that you display and bring to the table and how you manage. And manager is more like a designation which is a construct about organizational work, so which has typical roles of coordination, about assigning duties, about taking decisions. So that's the difference actually. So even a manager is a leader and has to play leadership roles every now and then, demonstrate leadership qualities. Well, Reva, we have faculty delivering a very large number of courses. faculty coming from diverse backgrounds, from US, from Europe, from different another schools in India. Everybody has their own way of evaluating. So you will have mix of projects, you'll have mix of assignments, you're going to have examinations, typical examinations, a mix of all. So that is how it is. So you'll have mix of everything. Well, good question again, AD. How accurate are Caliper test results? Well, it has been proven to be extremely accurate. People who have been using corporates across the world, thousands of them, use Caliper tests to identify potential leaders, do the succession planning, etc., etc. Right? So Caliper is certainly a good prediction about what kind of roles will suit you and how you're going to perform on the job. So it is indeed it's a proven tool. It's a psychometric test, so there's no right or wrong answer. So, but it is certainly, as far as prediction of a person's performance is concerned in the future role, it is a good prediction tool. In absence of anything else, you may hear stories, but what is the best thing that you have? Well, it is the best thing that you have. Yeah, so if you, how would you find out about, okay, when you come for your interview, AD, you would be given a Caliper report which will tell you what's your strength, what's your weakness, where you could improve, where you need guidance, where you don't need guidance. So it's a one-page report that is given for everyone. And during the induction, for those students who enroll, we also again bring the Caliper report and discuss that. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. And those of you who are already enrolled, I look forward to welcoming you in the campus. And those who are in double minds, we'll see you in 2014.